So you know what the best thing to do is, but do we always act on it? You know, when we do know, do we always put that in? Or you hear something that I really shouldn't be living like that. Or you hear something about the way life is for other people and that's probably true, but do you always compensate for that when you're acting with them? That is the principle here. So we have this kidney system, which is to live by these truths, but if we don't do it, we get messed up spiritually, if we don't let the spiritual kidneys do their job. And so now we're going to go down the road to the kidney spirits, or we're going to talk about the kidney spirits. But to be there, we got to set a bunch of foundations. So first, let's talk about how this process of cleansing out of the mind or spirit works in the world. So for that, we turn to author Peter Rhodes, who's been on the program before, and we wanted him to talk a little bit about how do we prevent our spiritual kidneys from working while we're here? And that comes through denial. So I asked him to talk a little bit about denial in life, and particularly around addiction. So here's what he had to say.
Well, I guess I'll speak a little bit from my own experience. They say in addictions you have denial, minimization, rationalization. Yeah, I guess it's the way the ego protects itself from being seen for what it really is, which is a force that makes your life not only unmanageable but miserable, ruins relationships and so forth. So it has to protect itself. So it often points to other people as the problem, or that's not such a big problem if you go drinking, only 3 times a week, right? I mean, and you have to get away from the kids and they're yelling and screaming. I know your wife's upset about that, but I've talked to the guys down at the club and they all agree that, it's really important to get out and relax a little, all the hard work you do. So it's like the ego-based mind, the thinking mind, really wants to put itself in the greatest, best light, even though if you really shine the truth on it, it's selfish and self-centered. It's a jerk, and it causes all the trouble. So a rationalization and minimization, if you have an addiction, you're started out, at least I started out doing, because I liked it. I like drinking. I like some other things too. And then gradually you aren't doing it, it's doing you, and you lose power. But the addict and the addiction like what they're doing. And it says your addiction would have killed you a long time ago, except it needs transportation. Well, you are the transportation. You're the means by which, in my faith, they believe hell can flow in through your love of self and love of the world. Part of love of the world is pleasures, lust and so forth. So it wants to continue doing what it's doing. In fact, it wants to continue to grow. But so it doesn't want you to catch on that you've lost control and you're no longer going out to drink. Drinking is bringing you out, the body, the transportation out, to enjoy the pleasures that it has. May not only be drinking, it may be you're doing some things you shouldn't be doing. Your wife shouldn't find out you're doing down at that club, or the kind of club you went to. All these things are muted by that ability to minimize, rationalize, and justify.
So that is the phenomena of denial. And that would be like nothing's getting through the kidneys. But what do we need to do to fix that? What has to happen to get somebody who's not seeing what's going on to see what's going on? So Peter talked more about that.
Well, they call it hitting bottom. In one, nowadays in the headlines, a couple justices were just sharing some pornography. Just some pornography, some statements about racism and sexism and stuff like that. They were having a good time. They weren't doing anything wrong. And all of a sudden, now they've hit bottom. They may lose their job. They may lose their relationship. So if you've had your 5th DUI and they take your license from you and you're a truck driver, it may have come to your attention what people have been telling you for years: you're drinking too much. You're out of control. But you don't know that. So hitting bottom is one thing. A friend of mine woke up and saw himself on TV, that he was being indicted and they were going through his office to look for child pornography. He said, that's quite a wake-up call. So my wake-up call with alcohol is a lot easier. I just happened to be in a camp situation and they had a camp meeting about somebody who had brought alcohol onto state ground when they shouldn't have, and it wasn't a big deal. They just wondered what to do about it. Well, when they called the meeting, I just put down my 5th of Johnny Walker Red. So when they were talking, it came to my attention that, oh, if I brought alcohol here, I didn't think it was a problem. I'm just drinking in my office, writing down my talk. But they think it's a problem. And I started feeling hot, and I was like, maybe I do have a problem. So that was a sort of sneaky wake-up call, and it could have been a lot worse. You know, you can be in an accident and lose some lives, you know, to find out. So, yeah, sometimes it dawns on you, you know, for the 100th time you say, I'm not going to drink at the party tonight because I do things I shouldn't do. And you do it one more time. So sometimes it's slow, sometimes it's fast, but something I think has to break through the pleasure of that insanity. This says this price of this pleasure of insanity, whether it's drunkenness or spending or gambling or hope or whatever it is, the price is too much for what you're getting, and then you want to stop, and then you find you can't. Now you got a real problem.
So something needs to happen to snap somebody out of it. They call it hitting bottom, to get you to realize the price of this is not worth it. That's an element of beginning the detoxing process.